For the ages. It's a conversation. Our different generations coming together to hear one another, to understand one another. That is who we are. And it's through the conversations and the bridges that we create, through our voices and our stories and our lives. These lives that matter to the world, to our history of where we've been and where we want to go. It's through our art where we find each other and see that we are connected, and together we build bridges that unite us for the ages.
Hello. Hello, everyone. So welcome to the premiere of For the Ages. It is so thrilling to be here. I cannot tell you how happy I am to be here with everyone. My name is Dana White. I'm the founder of For the Ages, and I'm also an assistant professor at Kent State University, where I teach everything regarding film in the College of Communication and Information. So it's just such an honor to be here with all of you. We're here to celebrate the premiere of For the Ages, but I want to give you a little background about what we're about and how this whole thing started. For the Ages emerged about a year ago from a real desire to honor and tell the stories of our elders, the most important people in our communities, and especially in these unprecedented times in our history. It was created to start a kind of a conversation between generations through the lens of art in all its many forms. And today you will see that we have begun to do just that. That we are creating what's called the Film Poetry Project. So how did we come to the marriage of film and poetry, right? That's a good question. Well, around the time that I started to envision For the Ages, I was introduced to a man that most of you know, David Hassler, the director of the Wick Poetry Center. And David is a true artist, a dynamic leader, and a visionary. And he introduced me to the amazing poetry of the Judson Manor poets, which came out of workshops with the Wick Poetry Center in Judson Manor. So I read the manuscript of the writings of the Judson poets, and I was stunned at how poignant and beautiful the work was. And I cried through all of it. And actually, I'm going to cry right now, so sorry. But I picked up the phone and I called him afterwards and I said, David, let's do something amazing together. And in David's spirit, he was all in. And engaging the Kent State filmmaking students to make experimental films out of these stunning poems was clearly what we had to do to unite the voices of our elders and our young adults. And that's what brings us here today. As an artist myself, I've always found that art is really the unifier of the souls and the hearts. And you will hear from my students a little bit later, the powerful experience that they have had connecting to these amazing poets through the creative process. It's been a seminal experience for them in their work and in their own lives. And the Film Poetry Project is a true collaboration between hearts, minds, and spirits. So today we'll be hearing a few words from David Hassler, the director of the Wick Poetry Center, and Jen Anderson from Judson Manor, and a few words from our Judson poets. And then we will screen the film poems all together for about 25 minutes total. And then there's going to be a Q&A afterwards with our filmmakers. So I hope you can stay for the whole program. So now it is really my great honor to introduce my collaborator, my esteemed colleague and fellow artist, David Hassler, director of the Wick Poetry Center. So take it away, David.
Thank you, Dana. I can't enable my video.
Well, we'll figure
That's
that
Georgie's role. The host has stopped it.
Let's see.
Is it working now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, Dana. It is a great honor and very exciting for all of us at the Wick Poetry Center to begin this incredible collaboration with you and your incredibly talented Kent State students. As you can imagine, it would be very difficult for anyone to say no to an idea like this, and from somebody like Dana, who reached out to me about a year ago. And when I thought back to a collection of beautiful poems from the Judson Manor seniors and thought to share that with Dana, this great magic started to happen. What you're going to see tonight is this conversation between Kent State students, not interpreting the Judson Manor poems, but taking them into their own lives, their own hearts, and making a new work of art inspired by them. There's a wonderful quote by, I often repeat this, by Stanley Kunitz, who at the age of 94, he wrote, "He who has forgotten the child he was is already too old for poetry." And so I think, this collaboration between young college student videographers, filmmakers, and seniors and their beautiful voices and poems is this conversation between the wisdom in our young voices, the wisdom in our older voices, and it's something new. So I hope this is the beginning, for sure, of film poems. We definitely at Wick Poetry Center know where we can provide poetry to film students here at Kent State. So we look forward to more of that with our entire team. And speaking of which, I want to say a big thank you to Georgie Mahaly, who is our assistant director of PR and marketing and our techno wizard. So Georgie, this is no small feat.
Big wizard.
The wizard.
Wizard,
No small feat to pull off.
Yay, Georgie.
So thank you, Georgie. This wouldn't be happening without your dedication, your willingness to jump in and do this. And I also want to thank the Judson Manor, Lynn Bartle, who was the program coordinator at the time that I was conducting these workshops. And Lynn is here, I hope, listening and watching. And she was a big part of the magic that happened in those workshops. And now Jen Anderson is currently the program coordinator. And Jen, you and I met briefly, and then you jumped into this project. And all I could hear from the seniors is how, you've got to talk to Jen. Jen's wonderful. You got to talk to Jen. She'll make it happen. So Jen, would you say a few words too? And thank you for the work that you've done to make this possible tonight.
Thank you, David. And thank you for asking me to say a few words today. As David said, my name is Jen Anderson. I'm the programming coordinator here at Judson Manor. And it's been my honor and my privilege to continue the wonderful Lynn Bartle began, along with David Hassler and the talented Judson poets some years ago now. My experience during my short time with the project has been deeply moving, and my relationship with the poets has grown. On behalf of everybody at Judson, thank you to everyone involved. At this time, it's my pleasure to introduce you to the poets whose work will be featured in the films that you're about to see. The filmmakers will be reading the biographies of the poets who couldn't be with us today. The first one is Elvidio Bufalini.
Hi everyone, my name is Ben Kemper. I directed a short called Elegies for John based on Elvidio Bufalini's writing. Elvidio Alvin Bufalini passed away on November 1st in 2015 at the age of 91. He lived at Judson Manor for 19 years with his longtime partner, John Collar. Elvidio was a World War II Army Air Force veteran and the lone survivor of a serious plane crash. He began his teaching career in the Cleveland Heights University High School system. He then continued his teaching career at Cuyahoga Community College and Carados College in Norfolk, California. He was loved by his students and kept in touch with many. As one student wrote about him, Mr. Buffalini was my most memorable teacher ever. He was so ahead of his time, creative, thoughtful, inspiring, a most special teacher. Sixth grade at Taylor Elementary is forever etched in my mind. When I became a teacher, I never forgot the element of surprise he used to engage us. Elvidio had an appreciation for the arts, theater, classical music, and poetry. He was a great supporter of many institutions, such as the Cleveland Institute of Art, the Nature Center of Shaker Lakes, and the Cleveland Museum of Natural History.
Hello, everyone. My name is Michael Indriolo, and I'm going to be reading Joan Mortimer's bio. Joan Mortimer passed away on January 19th, 2016. She was born Corinne Joan Falcon Rothwell on May 21st, 1923 in New York. Joan graduated from Smith College, where she met Dartmouth graduate Ted Mortimer Jr., whom she married in 1944. She received a master's degree in curriculum and education from Case Western Reserve University and worked as a substitute teacher in the Cleveland Heights schools. In 1966, the family moved to Albuquerque, New Mexico, where she received a PhD in psychology from UNM. Returning to Cleveland in 1975, she began work as a psychologist in the Department of Child Psychiatry at Case Western Reserve University Medical School and became a tenured professor in the department. After her retirement, she lived at Judson Manor and served on various committees and boards. She was a great sailor in her youth on Long Island and later with her grandchildren. She traveled extensively to South America and Japan with Ted, and later to Belgium, France, Italy, and Yellowstone National Park. Before his death in 2002, she and Ted spent many happy hours snorkeling among the coral reefs of the Caribbean, the Great Barrier Reef, and the reefs of Fiji.
Hello, my name is Addie Burks. I'll be reading the bio for Robert Brooks. Bob Brooks is a native-born Clevelander. They say that his mother had invited the whole family for Thanksgiving dinner and was cleaning up when he expressed a desire to join the party. When his mother informed his dad of this, his reaction was unexpected. "Aw, gee," he said, "can it wait a little? The guys and I were just going to play a game of cards." Bob remembers early childhood very well. There is a list of ambitions that he remembers. He wanted to be a dog, then a dog catcher, a poet, an architect, an interior designer. He did not want to be a French teacher, but fate would have it otherwise. He had the very good fortune to attend the Cleveland Public Schools at a time when their reputation for excellence was so great that visitors from all over the United States could come to sit in their classrooms to learn how to do the things they did. Although he didn't plan it that way, Bob became a French teacher in that school system, but long after it lost its luster. He retired after 30 years and devoted his time and energy to volunteering. As luck would have it, most of his time was spent working with infants and small children. They taught him much that he could have used in the classroom. In November, he will have completed 21 years of residence at Judson Manor. He feels he has much to be thankful for.
My name is Joanne Randall. I was born in Cleveland, Ohio at the Mount Sinai Hospital in 1942. My mother and father were the most influential people in my life when I was growing up. I remember learning about the Taj Mahal in grade school, and when I came home and told my father about it, I was so amazed that he already knew all about it. After the death of my father at a young age, my mother had to work outside the home, which represented a major change for me. As a young adult, I was invited to work in a preschool for children with special needs by Dr. Jane Kessler, who would become my mentor. I became so interested in child psychology that I wanted to pursue a master's degree. At that time, the only advanced degree in psychology at Case Western Reserve University was a PhD. Although I didn't originally intend for it to end up that way, I earned my PhD. Years later, when I moved into Judson Manor, I reunited with my mentor, Jane Kessler. She's now my neighbor. I married Robert Randall in 1968. In 1973, my husband had a Fulbright Fellowship in Argentina, and we were there for 6 months. We traveled all over Latin America upon leaving Argentina. Then we followed that up with a year in Israel because Robert had a visiting professorship at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. The students there were amazing, and Robert enjoyed them very much. Each one of them had to know English at the university level because at that time, not all research materials were available in the Hebrew language. Upon moving with my husband to Kentucky, I established my practice in general psychology. We lived in Kentucky for 16 years, and I continued my practice when we moved back to Cleveland. Then, in the year 2000, I retired. Robert and I had 2 children, a boy and a girl. I'm very close with my daughter, who is in her 40s now. I am most proud of my marriage and family. Robert died in 2004, and I consider my 36-year partnership with him, raising our family together, to be my most enduring accomplishment. Shakespeare's line from Hamlet, "To thine own self be true," has always resonated with me, and I'm happy to say that that is how I have always tried to live my life.
My name is Joe Steinhurst. I hail from Boston, where my husband and I raised our 3 children. Under the auspices of the Massachusetts Dental Society, I served as executive director of the Massachusetts Citizens Committee for Dental Health, an organization that promoted fluoridating public water supplies across the Commonwealth. After retiring, we spent summers in Vermont and winters in Florida, where I studied Asian brush painting at the Murakami Museum. Although I had never lifted a brush until I was in my 70s, painting became my second career, which included a one-woman show in Montpelier and one in Florida. In our 80s, we relocated to Cleveland to be near our daughter. She suggested that we consider Judson Manor, which was a perfect fit, and where I have been fortunate to age in place. I will be 98 years old in August.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much. What an amazing stories. Oh my gosh, you are both just incredible. All of you are. So this is an amazing thing that we can all be together in this virtual world and share our stories together like this. So without further ado, we are going to show you the film poems. Keep in mind, we're trying to glitch through some of these virtual issues. So we're going to, hopefully it will catch up to itself, the actual project. So if we have to stop it and start again, we may, but hopefully we won't have to. But anyway, without further ado, I would like to introduce to you the wonderful collaboration of the Judson poets, the Kent State filmmakers, the Film Poetry Project. Take it away, Georgie.
The poem sprang from my head, like Athena from Zeus, alive with alliteration, musical with metaphor. It may have been the middle of the night, but perhaps it was before I drifted off to sleep. In any case, in my semi-stuporious state, I was brilliant and original. Whole stanzas came to me, complete and perfect. I express myself with fluidity and prophecy. And melodies and rhythms never before imagined. Not by Wordsworth, not by Keats. My mind was alive and fluid. If only my hands could be relied on. To put down the words that came to me that night. But the same central nervous system so poised for poesy. Could not control the opposable thumb that stood between me and the lower animals. Clumsy, without the strength to grip. Hands that once preferred a fountain pen. I would have written with a quill if one had been provided. Can now barely hold, let alone write with, a pencil. I outsmart my illness with sophisticated voice software, only to discover that as my central nervous system deteriorates, it has become difficult to speak with my former fluency. I drift to sleep, certain that my inspiration will spring up before me in the morning. I will pluck it from the air, like a perfect plum from a tree. But in the morning, the poem is gone. And I am once again alone and empty. No song, no syllable, no stanza. I cannot remember even. What it was. I wanted so badly to say.
Today flags are flying outside my window. 4th of July, and I am back in my parents' home, Boston, 1944. Flags were flying then, not all red, white, and blue, but white ones too with gold stars to signify broken hearts. I remember when the telegram arrived, just a piece of paper carrying tears for a wife, a fatherless child, parents in shock. Now, more than 60 years later, no telegram arrives, yet feelings remain for wasted lives' untimely end, while once again, flags are flying.
You are sitting where you always sat, on the living room sofa, wearing your blue Pendleton unbuttoned. A recent bio of Hamilton, open to page 319, sits atop the Wall Street Journal section spread across your lap. On the other side of you, tossed on the cushion, are 2 Gentlemen of the Road adventure novels you so love. You are barricaded, as you almost always were, between the corner of the sofa and your books. I am sitting silent near you, as painfully noiseless as you. My hands ache to touch you, but don't. Want to keep you here this close to me a little while longer. To hear you say again, you love me. Miss me too. Nothing. Not a word. Nevermore. Forevermore. My empty hands lay limp in my lap with grief.
Understood. Loss happens. An attached part is severed. the news doesn't get through. The whole doesn't truly know. Not yet. One beloved or another, father, daughter, valued neighbor, die. This we know and allow. But God no. A partner? A part of self? I will die first, I think, and am calm. But it happened the other way. I survived. Handled it well, I hear. Made a life, they say. Only later do I learn. When others go, I do not see a severed stump, an attachment gone. The place it hurts is everywhere. My body seeks silently, ceaselessly, always knowing that gone is gone. And quite clearly it is not. It is forever with you, that missing part of self. The whole does not know gone. Not ever.
It was late November afternoon. A wretched, wind-blasted winter's day had come too soon. In the clinic's ICU, where once again he was confined, bedbound, attached to this and that device, doing their monitored best to keep his frail body breathing, its congested heart beating. After I sat at his bedside an hour, no, 2, and ready to leave, he quietly assured me that he was comfortable, in no pain. Just wanted to sleep, he said. With their hands coupled, his eyes glistening, we said our warm goodbyes. Cupping gently his face, "I'll see you tomorrow," I said. I never did, nor would I ever again. He's dead. Died 3 months ago. My dear John, gone. My fair checkmate, gone into the wind and cold, out there somewhere beyond, atomized back into the senseless mass of universal wonder. But here in my own green world, he remains, the brightest star in my own blue heaven, in memory, warmly alive as are my mother and father, and cherry trees in springtime forever blossoming, recalled by circumstance, appearing and disappearing in clips of moving pictures. It feels like yesterday he died. Every day here at home, it's like he never left. I could be doing anything, and just like that, he'll come to mind. And he's right here. He comes alive in me. Earlier today, I was getting ready to go outdoors and putting on that fleece-lined Eddie Bauer jacket he liked so much, struggling to get my arms into the sleeves. He was here, behind me, his spirited hands helping my arms into the sleeves, straightening the collar. The way it fit so perfectly, I could actually feel his warm body embracing me, that sensation racing through me like electricity, thrilling my body with an impossible joy, such as the first that had coupled us. I was shocked. That's why I'll always say, when people get to talking about how much they miss their loved ones, I'll say he's not dead, my indestructible love. I'll say, as a matter of fact, we'll never be apart.
Unseemly. That is what I am. Life and my mother taught me a mask. I like to think I look like everyone else. My mother prized ladylike behavior, and I prized her. I fear I am a person with an unseemly lust for life. A greedy one. Enjoy all beauty. See it, hear it, make its acquaintance. Revere and rejoice in it. With people and ideas to make their acquaintance is not enough. The drive is to be in real contact. To be in touch. To share. And converse. Across hearts.
Hello? Dad? Hi. Yeah, it's me. Surprised? Sorry to wake you up.
You weren't? But Maeterlinck says that the dead always sleep until someone thinks of them. Well, I must admit, I do think of you often.
No, really. But maybe, even after all these years, there are still others who think of you too.
Me? Oh, I'm fine. Funny, isn't it? Now, I'm older than you.
Why, I'm even older than Grandpa or Grandma.
Yep.
That's right.
I am the last one left. You might say that I am the tail end of your immortality.
Maybe not.
Maybe after me, the part of me that is you will live on.
You know something, Dad?
While you were alive, we never talked much. You were always on the road.
We never really spoke the same language either.
Each of us felt that the other had let them down.
I'm so glad that
For a little while,
Before you died,
there was a meeting of the minds in a place called
trust.
I can't help it,
I
Dad.
can't help it, Dad.
I can't help it, Dad.
I really don't mean to disturb your rest.
But I think of you all the time.
I remember your integrity.
I wonder if I am measuring up.
I'll try to think more quietly.
Hang in there, Dad.
It won't be long now.
Hi, good evening, everybody, and thank you all for attending. I am Michael Amato, and I will be conducting the Q&A here in just a moment. But first, I'm going to introduce myself a little bit. I'm a digital media production student here at Kent State, and I've been working on For the Ages as a production manager. So I've been facilitating a lot of the behind the scenes stuff along with Professor White. And I just like to say it's been an honor helping her build this initiative. And I've been involved in retirement communities for basically my entire life. My parents both worked in jobs that heavily involved older adults. In fact, they had met each other because they both worked at Judson Manor long ago. But I've had this really special upbringing where I've always been surrounded by older adults, and I have volunteered at the retirement community my mom has worked at in Oberlin for as long as I can remember. And as soon as I was old enough to get a job, I found myself working in another retirement community in Westlake. When Professor White had come to me with this initiative and had asked me to join, I was beyond thrilled to hear about For the Ages, because it's the intergenerational relationships that I have made that molded me into the person that I am today. And a project like this that uses poetry and film to build the bridge between two generations that couldn't be further apart these days is something very special. But without further ado, I would like to introduce our panel of artists and get this Q&A started. But before I begin, I would like to note for our audience that there is a chat. So if any audience members has any questions, please feel free to ask our filmmakers anything. I'll have my eye on the chat. So without further ado, I invite my filmmakers to turn on their cameras and join me for a Q&A. All right, hello everybody. Now, should we go down the list and introduce everybody? I think that might be a good idea. So let's start with, I'll go by how I see everybody. So first we have Addie Burks.
Hello.
And then we have Ben Kemper.
Hey guys.
And then we have Michael Indrolio.
Hello.
And then we have Riley Schrock.
Hi, everybody.
Aline Joven.
Hello.
And then Willow Campbell.
Hello.
All right, and now that we have everybody, oh, and then how could I forget our amazing editor, Kayla Pierce.
Hello.
All right, so without further ado, let's get this Q&A started. The first question that I have for everybody, and questions are open to anybody, so feel free to answer whenever you have anything you want to say. But this first question that I have for you guys was kind of the obvious first question that came to my head, which was, what was it like interpreting the work of an artist from a completely different generation?
I'll go. I think that overall film is a pretty timeless medium. And I think that when you take something from one medium to another, and in the same breath, one generation to another, I think you cross a lot of bridges that wouldn't have been able to be crossed otherwise. So I think, at least for me, that was one of the driving factors of being really excited to start working on these.
For me, it was just being able to read like another writer's work, especially a poem, which is always so personal to whoever's writing it. Just being able to be in that other person's thoughts and learning from their perspective, especially when it's someone who's been around and alive much longer than I have, and just being able to live in that that perspective as well was really cool.
I think, you know, one thing that I pulled from the entire experience is there are these universal truths that echo, you know, no matter who you are or where you're from or, you know, what you've experienced. But there's this deep understanding of love and of so many different things. And to get to experience that both in poetry and in film, you know, that was kind of an amazing thing to be a part of.
Yeah, I think the beauty about poetry and why everyone, you know, regardless of age or background, is so drawn to it is because it is, like everyone is saying, it's so timeless, it's so universal. And when we write poetry, we write about the human condition, and we write about, you know, the depth of experience, and you find yourself in a poem, even if it doesn't specifically, even if the technicalities aren't speaking to you, you can still find yourself in it. And so that's what I found working in this poem. It was deeply intimate, regardless of any gap between us generational wise.
I agree. That's kind of one thing I learned throughout the process. And actually doing film poetry in general was pretty new to me. I hadn't realized it was full of such a rich community of filmmakers. So it was really amazing to be able to immerse myself in that environment.
Does anyone else have anything to say? If not, I will move to the next question. Those were beautiful answers, guys. But someone asked in the chat, and it was actually my next question to ask you guys, which was, what drew you to the poem that you guys had interpreted?
Hi. At first I didn't exactly know what drew me to do Phantom Limb. It was a really powerful poem about loss, and it was really, really special to read it and to see it. And I was just kind of drawn to it, you know, for whatever reason. And then, like, less than, you know, a month into this project, one of my best friends from high school died, and that poem took on a whole new meaning to me. And so this whole process, like this, making this film, helped me sort through the grief that I felt, you know, going through that stuff. And it was, honestly, it was an integral part of my grieving process. And it was really cool to see how grief is universal, and how, you know, loss, although it's so painful, it connects us all as human beings.
Similarly to Michael, you know, at first, when I read through all of the poems, well, I read through it multiple times, found myself reading through it and crying at how beautiful they were, and just kind of overwhelmed with all of these different emotions. And so when I started working on Empty Hands, it was a poem that affected me, and I couldn't elaborate why. And the more that I worked on it with my girlfriend, who's also in the film and reads the poem. And just, you know, both of us, you know, are acquainted with loss, and everyone's acquainted with loss, and everyone's acquainted with grieving. And it connected her and I in such a deep way, and connected me with a deeper understanding of what it means to grieve and to remember, more importantly, remembering those that we've lost, and remembering, you know, the important people in our lives. And so it's a project that has and will continue to stick with me, you know, throughout my time as an artist and throughout my time as, you know, just a human being.
So my poem was Bob Brooks's poem, Long Distance. And I was incredibly drawn to it because I thought it just read like an open letter. And even from the very first lines, like, hello, Dad, it's like a letter from everyone to everyone. And I felt like I heard it before I saw it. I heard all of the voices floating in, and different, you know, sounds shifting and changing. And then I started to see it with these characters and this kind of wispy, breaking, almost narrative that feels like distance, that feels like broken communication. And I was really drawn to just kind of like the conversational aspect of that poem. It felt like a phone call. It felt like a letter. And it keeps, the funny thing is about it, it keeps changing. The first time I read it, the most recent time I read it, it just keeps changing. And I just keep reading it, and it's like a new poem, a different poem, and I'm learning new things, and things happen in my life, and I read it again and it's completely different. And I'm sure that's happening with everyone else too. It's very cool.
I actually wanted to compliment you on that personally, because I think the way you handled it with the audio was really nice. So I really liked how you brought that to life.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Well, since I'm here, I guess I'll talk about Lost Poem written by Joanne. Hi, Joanne. Good to see you again. I connected Lost Poem to very closely to coming into college, because I think at its core, I think what Joanne talks about is once having something and over time not having it, or not being the same due to the effects of aging. While I couldn't completely relate to that, I related to the idea of once having something and not having it over a period of time. And with COVID and everything, and I'm sure everyone can relate to this, coming into my senior year, I was just so devastated, and I wasn't able to really create the way I wanted to create. And so I lost a lot of my creative confidence. And so, you know, coming across Lost Poem, I kind of related to like, it was my life jacket in a sea where I was struggling. So that was my connection with Lost. It was quite beautiful.
Similar to what Eileen's saying, I felt like the current situation and COVID and everything influenced my film with Joan Mortimer's poem, What Sort of Person? And I was also really drawn to it just with the question it asks in its own title and throughout the poem. What sort of person? Like, who am I? What does it mean to be a person right now and just throughout your life? And I mean, that's obviously something everyone kind of works throughout their whole life. But I think especially during this time when we're all kind of like having to refigure out what it means to be us in a new time, in a new sort of world. that poem really drew me in, and I was just reading it really made me want to work with it and made me want to read it more. So I was very thankful to read it then and to be able to work on it.
Thank you guys. So beautifully said. I have another question for you guys, which is, I mean, you guys have been answering these questions. I was going to ask, did you find that any of these poems intersected with your own lives? And clearly they have. But one of the filmmakers mentioned while writing their poem that they had felt a longing to meet their poet. Did you feel like that making these poems had brought you closer to somebody that you had never met? And did you feel that you had a new understanding for this generation's perspective?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, you know, having the opportunity to interpret someone's work, especially a poem, which, you know, we've said is so personal and so powerful, you know, working with it so intimately where, you know, you're planning out shots that mean different things, and you're, you know, trying to interpret it the best that you can based on your experiences in life. It opens this silent dialogue through space and through time with someone who you've never met. And, you know, now for the first time, I can see Joanne, and even though it's virtual, you know, hello, and thank you so much for, you know, allowing me to create something with you, you know. And it's this beautiful thing where we have, you know, collaborated on something almost without knowing it, you know, and so it's just an incredible experience all around.
Right back at you.
Thank you.
Well, then for my next question, I'll ask, since these projects were made during a global pandemic, you all might have experienced limitations to your filmmaking that you wouldn't normally have to work around. Did you experience any limitations, and how did it push you to become more creative or resourceful?
Well, I'll say that because of the pandemic, I kept my cast just of the people that were already in my close circle. So it was my family, my roommate. I had the same people and myself do the narrations. And, you know, shooting days, it was just me, a camera, and then whoever was in front of the camera. And I think those limitations, anytime you put a limitation on yourself, you are forced to really think a bit outside of the box. And I think the interesting intersection with poetry with that is that I think the same goes for poetry. There's certain forms of poems where you put very strict limitations on yourself and you create something that is really amazing that maybe you wouldn't have been able to do if you just had like all the, I don't know, freedom in the world. So I enjoy the challenge. I don't even think of it as a challenge. It's just, you know, working with what you have.
Kind of going off of that, Addie, I think it's like if you have if you can do anything, you're probably not going to do the best thing. You're probably not going to make anything great or anything that you're proud of if you have, you know, limitless resources. And I think with the restrictions that we had, whether it was due to COVID or budgetary or equipment or personnel, whatever it was, like it led to better films. And I think that struggle sort of reflects the artists and the original poets' struggles in their poems. And it's to different degrees and it means different things to different people. But I think as far as those like universal human themes go, struggling to, whether it's to create something or get through a hard time, like everybody can relate to that. And I think you can see that in the films.
And I feel like we all sort of knew like the limitations going in. Like this project was created during COVID, kind of almost as a response to that isolation and disconnectedness that we all were kind of navigating at the beginning of well, almost a year ago. And so I feel like almost the limitation of COVID and of, like Eileen, you were saying, of not having the usual creative outlets that we normally did, this project was kind of like amazing to be a part of just during a time when you don't really have your normal creative outlets and aren't really allowed to do like the normal things that you would like to do.
Well spoken, guys. What is art without the limitations that without its limitations? You know, you have things happen, so it's incredible that you guys made stuff that was so beautiful during a time where we don't have everything we might normally have. So definitely a round of applause for you guys for that. My next question is, film poetry is an abstract approach to filmmaking where the visuals are more symbolic rather than literal interpretations. What were the visual inspirations for your poems, and how did you decide what these poems would eventually look like?
So my project is probably the least abstract out of everyone else on the panel. And I did that on purpose. When I read the poem for the first time, there were a lot of tangible objects, like the blue Pendleton, the Washington Post or Journal, and there were books and things that you would touch and you would feel. And the title of the poem itself, Empty Hands, having empty hands, even though there's nothing in your hands, it's still a tactile sensation. You still feel emptiness. And so for me, I wanted to focus, kind of on that element. And the most abstract moment of the project is Milena's hand reaching in the darkness. And to me, that was sort of the only part that needed to be abstract, because it was reaching out, for someone who's not there, frankly. And so that was kind of my way of going into it and trying to tackle the project in that regard.
I think in a way it kind of relates back to the question of what drew us to the films or the poems that we chose, and which ones we connected to with the most. Because I think as we're reading through them and as you sort of get to know the poet and the person behind the words a little more, you have that almost like clear, concise vision in your head, and it kind of paints the picture for you, and then you go along with it, and you're almost just the medium to interpret it. And I think when you're reading through them and the one that speaks to you the loudest, I think we all had those ones that we were drawn to, and those are the ones that we picked, and those are the ones that we ended up making. And I think that clear language that the poems spoke to us right from the beginning comes through in the films that we all worked so hard on.
Yeah, I think my approach to this was kind of just like I have a lot of shots of like time lapses of nature and random shots of lights on my wall and stuff. And so my approach was kind of just like whenever the poem would spring into my mind, going back, I had made like 2 shot lists before this and none of them really worked out. And so whenever the poem would just kind of spring into my mind, I would just start taking video of what I was doing, or I would go to a location with the intent to make visuals for this poem. And I would just kind of make, what was in front of me and what I felt at the moment. So it was very on the cuff or off the cuff, however that saying goes, but it was very impromptu. It was something that just kind of like I felt. And I think that's something that's cool about poetry, is that it allows for that kind of work. And I don't know, that's the way I work. So it was really cool.
I like that you mentioned that, because it really is kind of it's kind of like a in the moment type thing, and I think that's what makes for good art. It's just, and Ben put it a good way too, it's like we really are mediums. And I think what I try not to do is to overthink things. So I felt it out naturally, and hopefully it came out well on screen.
I think you're muted.
It came out beautifully on the screen. Thank you, Addie. I apologize. I didn't catch that, but you all did an incredible job on your pieces. They all looked gorgeous. We have time for one last thing, which is I would like each one of you to share a sentence about your experience on this project.
I can go. I think for me, Elvidio, his writing was very vulnerable and open, and sort of his willingness to reveal himself that way through his writing was something that I connected with right off the bat. And I feel very lucky to have come across his writing.
I'll say that I'm just incredibly grateful for this opportunity. It's been very surreal, and the fact that, you know, we were able to connect with our poets is also an amazing thing. And it was being able to connect with the poets themselves, and also just kind of get to know the amazing filmmakers that were a part of the project. I mean, I can only hope that For the Ages will be, you know, this is not just one collaboration now. It's the, like we said in the beginning, it's the start of something that will hopefully last a while. And it's definitely opened my eyes collaborating with the older generation, and it's something that I will cherish forever. So I'm extremely grateful.
I'll just kind of echo something that I said earlier. This project helped me understand that grief is universal. Loss connects us all, regardless of whether we're young or old.
I'll just say that working on projects like these, where it's not just your own work, it's another artist as well. There's an incredible responsibility that you feel when making your piece of art in conjunction with someone else. And I was just very honored to be a part of this project, and I'll echo what everyone else has said. I hope that it continue. I would love to do more work like this. It was incredibly fulfilling, and everyone's turned out so wonderful. So great job, everyone.
I agree as well. And I've just loved being able to be a part of a project that is mixing poetry and film together. They work so well together, and they're two things that I really love. And I'm just really, really grateful to be able to have worked on this project and to be able to work with your poem. Joe Steinhurst was amazing. Thank you for that. And yes.
Thank you, everybody. One more time. Riley, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say one thing.
Yeah, please.
It's going to be hard to follow everyone else. And I'm probably going to repeat a lot of what they said, but you know, to be a part of something this incredible, this timeless, and to create something that's immortal, you know, that will live on past me, and past, you know, so many other things, is an amazing feeling. And it's an honor to work with you, Joanne, and to work with a generation that, you know, at times we can feel disconnected with, and to bridge that gap and make that connection is, again, it's an honor. And this is something that, you know, as I said earlier, and I think all of the other panelists can kind of speak to this, this is something that will define me as an artist for the rest of my life. And something that I will think of, you know, on every project that I work on.
Wow. Wow.
That's beautiful.
Very touching.
Well, I would like to say thank you, everybody, for participating. This was incredible, and your projects looked amazing. And this is such a special thing. For the Ages is so beautiful, and I can't wait to see it grow. So on that note, I'm going to turn it back to Professor White for closing statements.
So thank you, everyone. as you've just witnessed, I imagine you can understand how proud I am of my students. And I need tissues because they are just an incredible group of young people. And, you know, I'm just really honored to work alongside of them. And I wanted to thank everybody for being here, for being a part of this with us, you know, and sharing in this beautiful union of this creative spirit. But I think most of all, I want to thank the poets, because without all of you, we couldn't have done this. And I want to thank Bob Brooks and Joe Steinhurst, Joanne Randall, Joan Mortimer, and Elvidio Buffalini for bringing into the world your spirits, your wisdom, and your grace. Your words live forever in our hearts, and you can see how deeply you have affected all of us, and we could not have done this without you. So thank you so much. And to answer some of the questions in the chat of, is this going to continue? Yes, it is going to continue. If I have any say over it, it's going to. And we want to continue doing this and bringing the generations together through poetry and film and other art forms, because this is, I mean, I said to my students the other day, in life, there's not a lot of win-win. This is a win-win. And there's just no bad side of this. It's just good all around. So thank you everybody for being here and sharing this really special project with us. And you know, we're gonna do it again. And thank you to the poets. Thank you so much to Judson for letting us do this with everyone. And everyone have a wonderful night, and more soon.